So these interviews are from the press conference yesterday to announce Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Frank Warren talking about Anthony Joshua. Lou DiBella talking about Anthony Joshua. Shelley Finkel talking about Eddie Hearn / Anthony Joshua. Stephen Espinoza talking about Anthony Joshua. Ben Davison, Tyson Fury's trainer, talking about Anthony Joshua. I mean, people, even Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury talked about Anthony Joshua, but to be fair to Tyson Fury, he didn't seem very keen on talking about Joshua. He kind of alluded to Joshua during the press conference, but after that, he didn't seem keen on talking about Joshua. He wanted to focus on Wilder and focus on their fight, to be fair to him. But prior to this fight being announced, all Fury ever did for the past few months is talk about Anthony Joshua constantly on Twitter. He couldn't keep Joshua's name out of his mouth, Tyson Fury. But now that the Wilder fight is signed, he wants to switch the focus over to Wilder, having milked some notoriety, having piggybacked off Anthony Joshua's fame. After doing that for several years, really, Tyson Fury, he's finally dropped it because he's got a big fight of his own against Deontay Wilder, and now he just wants to focus on Wilder. And Deontay Wilder, same thing. You know, he's been riding the AJ publicity train. That's what he's been doing. He's been piggybacking off AJ's success. He's been piggybacking off AJ's notoriety, Deontay Wilder, to boost his own profile, and it's worked because the two of them from doing that, the two of them from piggybacking off Anthony Joshua's success, they've managed to get themselves a big fight together without Joshua. Yeah, but for Frank Warren and all these other characters to be coming out and saying that that whoever wins this fight is the number one in the division is just nonsense. They're acting as though Anthony Joshua hasn't already fought in 2 unifications. One of them against an undefeated champion in Joseph Parker. These people are snake oil salesmen. And Joseph Parker, unlike Tyson Fury, actually had a championship belt. Joseph Parker, unlike Tyson Fury, has actually had more than one world title fight. Yeah. But somehow this is the most legitimate battle to decide who the number one in the division is. I mean, again, when Frank Warren is coming out and saying there's no doubt about it, whoever wins this is the number one in the division, it's a joke because Joshua's got a better resume than both these guys. So it's a complete farce. Snake oil salesman. That's what we're dealing with here. Snake oil salesman. And that's not to say this fight is not a good fight. It's a very good fight. And it's a very important fight. But for him to be acting as though the winner of this is the number one and there's no dispute about it, it's just, what a farce. No, the winner of this has to go and fight Joshua to decide who's the number one. We don't know who the number one is outright. We know who's got the best resume. We know who's got the most belts. That's Joshua. But we can't say Joshua is definitely the best because he hasn't fought Wilder and he hasn't fought Fury. And there's several other contenders in the heavyweight division who he hasn't fought. So we can't say for sure that Anthony Joshua is the best. He hasn't proven himself to be the best, but neither of these two, they haven't proven themselves to be the best. Joshua has proven himself to be the most accomplished. He has the best resume and he's achieved the most, 100%. But nobody has proved themselves to be the absolute undisputed number one in the division. So Frank Warren coming out of all this stuff is foolishness, and I just shake my head at anybody who buys into this and says, yeah, Warren's right. Sad stuff. And as I say, these guys just cannot keep Anthony Joshua's name out of their mouth. And it's not just in interviews where they're asked about Anthony Joshua. No, because if you heard Finkel and you heard Espinoza and Lou DiBella talking, particularly DiBella and Finkel, and even Warren, right? When they were on the table there at the press conference, they were making veiled references to Anthony Joshua without even being asked about Anthony Joshua. That's what they were doing. Because they still, as the promoters, feel like they need to piggyback off Joshua's success. When Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury went on Good Morning Britain, Wilder was talking into the camera about Anthony Joshua. To be fair, again, they weren't asked about Joshua, and rightly so. They're supposed to be asked about Joshua. Why are we acting as though Joshua's not relevant in the division? The man with 3 belts, the man with the most, with the best resume, with the unifications. Why are we acting like he's not relevant? Ridiculous. Of course, the journalists are supposed to ask them about Joshua, but these guys are voluntarily talking about him anyway, because they know they need him to help promote the fight. That's what it is. And look, I don't have any issue with it per se, with them using Joshua to promote the fight. The issue I have is the fact that they rubbish Joshua and, make out as though he's some kind of fraud or something, but then are constantly piggybacking off his success to promote their own fights. It's just extraordinary. And I'm going to talk about, actually, will I talk about it here? Now, I'll talk about it in a separate video, but, the behavior of Warren when it comes to Anthony Joshua, it's like when Joshua's contract with Matchroom was coming up to ending, Frank Warren was being so careful about what he said about Joshua. And if for the entirety of Joshua's career up until he recently signed again with Matchroom, Frank Warren has been very complimentary, and he's only criticized Joshua in terms of his promoter, Eddie Hearn, and the way he's been promoted and handled. He never criticized Joshua directly. But after Joshua signed again with Matchroom, and it looks as though he's going to end his career with Matchroom, okay, or at least have all his prime years with Matchroom, once Frank Warren realized that, then he started attacking Joshua directly. And this is typical Frank Warren behavior. It's typical Frank Warren behavior. So many times over the years, when fighters have left him or he's wanted to sign fighters and the fighters have gone elsewhere, you get Frank Warren who is singing their praises 1 minute, and then the second that they don't sign with him or come under his control in some way, now he's slagging them off. It's an absolute joke. And this is a pattern in Frank Warren's behavior that's been going on for decades. If those of you who don't know about it, well, you ain't been paying attention, or you don't really know Frank Warren that well. Yeah, the guy will, if he can't sign you or if you leave him or something like that, very often he starts slagging you off when just the day before, he was singing your praises. Ridiculous. And other promoters do this, but I can tell you for a fact that Hearn don't do that. Hearn's not a guy who, one thing Hearn does do, okay? This is one thing Hearn does do, is he will rubbish a fighter or downplay how good a fighter is, but then when he signs them, he starts singing their praises. That's one thing Hearn does do, all right? But one thing he hardly ever does that I've hardly ever seen him do is if he's got a fighter, yeah, and the fighter leaves him, he doesn't then start saying that fighter's rubbish. He doesn't then start slagging that fighter off. Certainly not to the level of a Frank Warren anyway. With Frank Warren, if you've followed his career over the years, it is a consistent pattern. He'll be singing your praises, then when you leave him, or if you don't sign with him when he thought he was going to get you, now he starts slagging you off. And that really diminishes his credibility. That diminishes the credibility of his word, doesn't it? Because there's always an agenda behind everything. And again, all the promoters have got an agenda. Eddie Hearn's got an agenda. But if you're looking for even a tiny semblance of objectivity, this is not the man to go and speak to. No, not at all. Not at all. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a separate video. But yeah, all these guys just can't keep Joshua's name out their mouth. And that's okay. That's cool. That's the game. But how are you gonna be piggybacking off a guy's success and slagging him off at the same time? At least give him some credit. Whereas my man Warren here is trying to make out as though Joshua is irrelevant. unbelievable. How is Joshua irrelevant in the heavyweight division? Man's got 3 belts. It's unbelievable stuff. Oh, it's the first time 2 undefeated champions. Tyson Fury's not a champion. He doesn't have a belt. Lineal is a mythical title. It doesn't exist. It's 1 champion in Wilder taking on a challenger in a voluntary defense. Man's talking about 2 undefeated champions. Joshua versus Parker was 2 undefeated champions. How about that with belts? With guys who had both had more than 1 world title fight before. Fury's only ever had 1. So anyway, I'll leave you guys with that. And yeah, let the haters hate. It's Hatman, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.